Stop telling people your problems. The more you talk, the weaker you become. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you vented about a problem to someone, maybe a friend, a coworker, or even on social media? You spilled out all your frustrations, expecting to feel better. But did you? Or did it just make you dwell on it even more? Here's the harsh truth. The more you talk about your problems, the bigger they seem. Every time you repeat them, you're reinforcing them, letting them take up space in your mind. Instead of finding a solution, you get trapped in a cycle of negativity, expecting sympathy, but gaining nothing in return. The ancient Stoics understood this long before modern psychology even existed. They believed that constantly talking about your struggles doesn't make you stronger. It makes you weaker. It shifts your focus from action to pity, from resilience to dependency. And let's be real. Most people don't really care about your problems. Some listen out of politeness, others just wait for their turn to talk, and a few might even secretly enjoy knowing you're struggling. Hard truth? Absolutely. But accepting this reality is the first step toward real strength. So today, we're diving into the wisdom of the Stoics, people who mastered the art of facing adversity without complaining. By the end of this video, you'll understand why oversharing your problems is holding you back. And more importantly, you'll learn the powerful mindset shifts that will make you mentally unshakable. Because at the end of the day, you don't need sympathy. You need solutions. Let's get into it. Number 1, the Stoic approach to problems. Now, before we dive into why you should stop telling people your problems, let's take a step back and understand the Stoic perspective on dealing with challenges. The Stoics, people like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus, weren't just philosophers who sat around thinking all day. They were warriors, emperors, and slaves who faced some of the hardest conditions imaginable. And through it all, they developed a mindset that allowed them to endure suffering without complaining, without seeking sympathy, and without letting their emotions control them. So what was their secret? It comes down to one core idea. You can't control the world, but you can control how you respond to it. Think about that for a second. Most of the problems we stress about come from things we can't control. Other people's actions, bad luck, unfair situations. But the moment you stop focusing on what's out of your hands and start focusing on your response, everything changes. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced war, betrayal, and a deadly plague, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, you can either waste energy complaining about how unfair life is, or you can use that energy to become stronger. The Stoics believe that your struggles are not meant to be broadcasted. They are meant to be conquered. Now let's break this down into something practical. Imagine two people go through the same tough situation. Let's say they both lose their jobs. Person A complains to everyone. They vent to their friends, post about it online, blame their boss, and talk endlessly about how unfair life is. Person B stays quiet. They acknowledge their frustration, but instead of broadcasting their suffering, they channel their energy into action. They start applying for new jobs, improving their skills, and taking control of what they can. Who do you think is more likely to bounce back? Exactly. The Stoics weren't emotionless, they just refused to let their emotions paralyze them. They understood that suffering in silence and taking action is far more powerful than seeking sympathy and staying stuck. Now, let's get into why constantly talking about your problems actually makes them worse. Number 2, why complaining makes things worse. Here's something you might not realize. Every time you talk about a problem, you're reinforcing it in your brain. It's like picking at a wound instead of letting it heal. The more you focus on it, the worse it gets. There's actual science behind this. Psychologists have found that repeatedly talking about negative experiences strengthens neural pathways associated with stress and anxiety. In simple terms, the more you talk about your problems, the more your brain trains itself to focus on negativity. It's called the negativity loop. Let's say you're going through a tough time. The first time you talk about it, it's just an event. But every time you repeat it, whether to a friend, a coworker, or in a social media rant, it becomes a bigger part of your identity. Instead of being something you went through, it becomes who you are. This is why the Stoics warned against complaining. They understood that the mind is like a garden. If you constantly plant seeds of suffering, don't be surprised when all you see is weeds. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Most of the pain we experience isn't from the actual problem. It's from the way we keep replaying it, reliving it, and reinforcing it. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean you should bottle everything up and pretend life is perfect. But there's a difference between acknowledging a problem and obsessing over it. The Stoics believed in facing problems internally first. Instead of complaining, they practiced self-reflection. Instead of seeking sympathy, they sought solutions. So the next time you're about to vent, ask yourself, is talking about this actually going to fix it? Am I looking for a solution or just an emotional release? Who benefits from me complaining? Me or the people who enjoy hearing about my struggles? Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people don't want to see you overcome your problems. They just want to hear about them. By keeping your struggles to yourself and focusing on action instead of words, you take back control. And that's exactly what the Stoics would have done. Number 3, seeking sympathy versus seeking strength. Let's get real for a second. When most people share their problems, they're not really looking for advice. They're looking for sympathy. They want someone to nod along, say, "Wow, that's so unfair," and make them feel validated. And hey, that's human. We all want to feel understood. But here's the problem. Sympathy doesn't solve anything. It might give you a temporary sense of relief, but it won't fix the issue. Worse, it can actually make you dependent on external validation instead of building internal resilience. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who faced endless wars, betrayals, and even a deadly plague, didn't have the luxury of complaining. He understood that no amount of sympathy would change reality. Instead of wasting energy seeking pity, he focused on what he could control: his mindset and his actions. He wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In other words, life is unfair. People will betray you. Bad things will happen. But feeling sorry for yourself or waiting for others to feel sorry for you? That's wasted energy. Now, let's be clear. This doesn't mean you should never talk about your problems. There's a difference between seeking guidance and seeking pity. Imagine two people going through a tough time. One person tells everyone about their problems, hoping for validation. They vent to anyone who will listen, hoping that sympathy will make them feel better. But the problem doesn't go away. It just lingers. The other person confides in one trusted mentor or friend, not to complain, but to get real advice. They take that advice, apply it, and work toward a solution. The first person stays stuck. The second person grows stronger. So ask yourself, when you talk about your problems, are you looking for strength or sympathy? Because the answer makes all the difference. Number 4. The power of silence and internal resolution. Now let's talk about a powerful concept the Stoics lived by: silence. In today's world, everyone talks. People overshare on social media, vent to their coworkers, and unload their problems onto whoever will listen. But the Stoics, they understood that silence is power. They believe that not everything needs to be said. Some struggles are meant to be dealt with internally, not externally. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic teachers, once said, "If someone is speaking badly of you, do not defend yourself against the rumors. Instead, respond with action." Think about that. Instead of wasting energy arguing, proving yourself, or explaining your pain, just let your actions speak. This applies to problems too. Instead of telling people how hard your life is, show them how strong you are by how you handle it. This is why the Stoics practiced journaling. Instead of venting to others, they wrote down their thoughts. It helped them process emotions without feeding negativity. Negative visualization. They imagined the worst-case scenario so that when real problems happened, they were already mentally prepared. Meditation on impermanence. They reminded themselves that everything, even suffering, is temporary. By keeping their struggles private, they kept their power. They didn't let their problems define them, and they didn't give others the satisfaction of seeing them struggle. Because here's the truth. Not everyone who listens to your problems wants you to succeed. Some people secretly enjoy your suffering. Others pretend to care, but they'll use your struggles as gossip. So why give them that power? Instead of telling people your problems, work on solving them. Instead of seeking validation, seek self-mastery. Instead of looking for sympathy, look for strength. Because in the end, the Stoics knew that real power comes from within. And once you master that, you become unstoppable. Number 5. Taking responsibility instead of seeking pity. Let's be honest, most people don't want responsibility. They want excuses. They want to believe that their problems are someone else's fault, so they don't have to do anything about them. But the Stoics had a different mindset. They believed that no matter what happens to you, you are responsible for how you respond. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, put it this way: "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This means that complaining, blaming, or seeking pity is a waste of time. You might feel justified in venting about how unfair life is, but at the end of the day, what does that actually accomplish? Let's say you're struggling financially. You could blame the economy, your boss, or your upbringing, talk endlessly about how unfair life is, hope someone will come along and fix things for you. Or you could take responsibility and focus on what you can control. Learn new skills, find better opportunities, cut unnecessary expenses, and build financial discipline. One path keeps you weak and dependent. The other makes you stronger. The Stoics were all about radical responsibility. They knew that even when life was unfair, it was still up to them to take action, instead of waiting for someone to save them. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, wrote this to himself: "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In other words, stop talking and start doing. Because here's the truth. The world doesn't owe you fairness. It doesn't owe you understanding. And it definitely doesn't owe you sympathy. The moment you stop expecting life to be fair and start taking full responsibility for your actions is the moment you gain real power. Now let's talk about why actions speak louder than words. Number 6. Actions speak louder than words. Think about the strongest people you know, the ones who seem unshaken by life's challenges. Do they constantly talk about their problems? Or do they handle them with quiet strength? The Stoics believed that talking too much about your problems actually drains your energy. Every time you talk about how bad things are, you're using up mental and emotional strength that could be going towards solving the problem. Seneca once said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." When you focus too much on your struggles, you amplify them. But when you focus on action, you take back control. Let's look at two types of people. The talker complains about how hard life is, blames others, waits for things to change. The doer stays quiet, makes a plan, takes action, and overcomes obstacles. Who do you respect more? The Stoics didn't waste words. They let their actions speak. Instead of complaining, they focused on discipline, self-control, and resilience. And you can do the same. The next time you're facing a challenge, instead of talking about it, ask yourself, what action can I take right now? How can I become stronger from this? Who do I want to be, the talker or the doer? Because at the end of the day, words don't change your life. Actions do. Now let's talk about when it's actually okay to share your struggles and how to do it wisely. Number 7, the role of selective vulnerability. Now let's clear something up. Stoicism doesn't mean you have to suffer alone or bottle everything up forever. It's not about pretending to be emotionless or acting like nothing bothers you. It's about choosing wisely who you share your struggles with and why. Because here's the reality. Not everyone deserves access to your struggles. Some people just want gossip. Some will secretly enjoy seeing you struggle. Others might mean well but offer bad advice that leads you in the wrong direction. That's why the Stoics believed in selective vulnerability. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor dealing with war, betrayal, and political chaos, didn't vent his frustrations to just anyone. Instead, he wrote privately in his journal and sought wisdom from a select few. He understood that sharing your struggles is only useful if it leads to solutions, not just emotional validation. So when is it okay to talk about your problems? When you're seeking solutions, not sympathy. There's a big difference between saying, "Life is unfair," and saying, "I'm dealing with this problem. What's the best way to handle it?" One keeps you stuck. The other moves you forward. When you trust the person's wisdom. Not everyone gives good advice. A mentor, coach, or experienced friend? Yes. Random people online? Probably not. When the conversation helps you grow. If talking about your problem makes you feel weaker, more helpless, or more emotional, it's not helping. But if it helps you gain clarity and take action, it's worth it. The Stoics weren't against talking. They were against wasting words on the wrong people. So, before you share your struggles, ask yourself, is this person truly capable of helping me? Am I looking for solutions or just venting? Will this conversation make me stronger or weaker? Because the truth is, not everyone deserves to know your battles. Some things are best kept private, worked on in silence, and conquered without an audience. Now let's dive into the practical Stoic strategies you can use to handle problems internally. Number 8. Practical Stoic strategies for handling problems internally. The Stoics didn't just believe in staying silent. They had practical methods for dealing with life's struggles without needing external validation. Let's break down a few of their most powerful techniques. 1. The control test. Focus on what you can control. Whenever you're struggling, ask yourself, is this within my control? If yes, what can I do about it? If no, how can I let go of it? The Stoics taught that most suffering comes from trying to control what we can't. By focusing only on what's within your power, you free yourself from unnecessary stress. 2. The dichotomy of control. Detaching from external events. Epictetus taught that life is split into two categories: things you can control, your thoughts, actions, and decisions; things you can't control, other people's actions, opinions, and external events. If something falls into the second category, the Stoics believed you should let it go instead of stressing over it. This keeps you from wasting energy on things you can't change. 3. The art of self-reflection. Journaling instead of venting. Marcus Aurelius didn't complain to others, he wrote in his journal. By journaling, you process emotions without needing external validation, gain clarity on problems without reinforcing negativity, strengthen self-discipline by focusing on solutions. Try this. Next time you're upset, instead of venting to someone, write it down. You'll be surprised how much it helps. 4. The pause method. Practicing patience before reacting. When something bothers you, don't react immediately. The Stoics practice pausing before responding, giving themselves time to think logically instead of emotionally. Ask yourself, will this matter in a week? A month? A year? Am I reacting emotionally or rationally? What would a wise person do in this situation? This simple habit helps you handle problems without letting emotions take over. 5. Meditations on impermanence. Seeing problems as temporary. The Stoics constantly reminded themselves that everything is temporary. Seneca said, "Time heals what reason cannot." No matter how bad a situation seems, it will pass. Understanding this prevents you from overreacting and helps you stay calm. Final thought on handling problems. Internally. Instead of talking about your problems, the Stoics focused on solving them. They practiced self-discipline, internal reflection, and mental resilience. Things that made them stronger, not weaker. And if you start applying these principles, you'll notice a shift. You'll stop seeking external validation, and you'll start relying on yourself. You'll stop wasting energy on things you can't control, and you'll start focusing on what you can change. And most importantly, you'll stop complaining and start conquering. Number 9. Building a Stoic mindset in a world of oversharing. We live in a world where oversharing is not just encouraged, it's rewarded. Social media has turned venting into entertainment. People post their struggles online, hoping for likes, comments, and sympathy. They measure their worth by how much attention their problems get. And in doing so, they become prisoners of their own suffering. But here's what the Stoics would say: stop broadcasting your pain. Start mastering it. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, could have easily complained. As emperor, he faced betrayals, wars, plagues, and personal losses. But instead of venting to the world, he kept a private journal. That's right. The most powerful man in Rome didn't seek validation. He sought self-mastery. He wrote, "You shouldn't give circumstances the power to rouse anger, for they don't care at all." Think about that. Complaining doesn't change reality. It doesn't fix problems. It only makes you more attached to them. Now let's break down 3 major ways oversharing is weakening you and how to escape it. 1. The trap of victim mentality. When you constantly share your struggles, you start seeing yourself as a victim. The more people sympathize with you, the more your brain links suffering with attention. And guess what? That keeps you stuck. The Stoics believed that you are never truly a victim unless you allow yourself to be. No matter what happens, you always have the power to control your response. Instead of asking, "Why me?" ask, "What can I do about this?" 2. The illusion of social media validation. Posting about your struggles might feel good in the moment, but it doesn't lead to real solutions. It's just a temporary high. You get likes and comments, but when the notifications stop, the problem is still there. The Stoics wouldn't waste their time posting complaints. They would use that energy to develop skills, improve themselves, and solve their problems. If you want to grow stronger, stop seeking validation online. Start proving your strength in real life. 3. The power of mystery and self-control. There's something powerful about being unpredictable. About not letting people know everything you're going through. When you keep certain struggles private, you maintain control over your own narrative. The Stoics understood that mystery is power. When you're not constantly talking about your struggles, people don't see you as weak. They see you as unshakable. Ask yourself, do I want to be known as someone who complains or someone who overcomes? Am I posting this because it helps me or because I want attention? How would a Stoic handle this situation? Because here's the truth. Strength isn't built through words. It's built through silence, self-discipline, and action. And that leads us to our final thoughts. Conclusion. Final Stoic wisdom. So, what have we learned? Complaining about problems makes them bigger, not smaller. Seeking sympathy keeps you stuck, while seeking solutions moves you forward. The Stoics didn't waste energy on problems they couldn't control. They focused on mastering themselves. Oversharing your struggles makes you dependent on external validation, while handling them in silence builds real strength. At the end of the day, your problems don't define you. Your actions do. So here's my challenge to you. For 1 week, stop complaining, stop venting, stop posting your struggles online. Instead, handle them with discipline. Journal instead of ranting. Reflect instead of reacting. Take action instead of seeking sympathy. And watch how much stronger you become. Because in the end, the world doesn't need to hear about your struggles. It needs to see you overcome them. Stay strong. Stay silent. Stay stoic.